We've got contacts 40 miles off to our right slightly. Can you give us an update?
Or how are you holding up? I put my foot down.
Yeah, tell me.
SA2 launch on
Jericho and Masada are...
Yeah, and we got SA2 launch North Valley on Zeva flight.
Hey guys, Spudknocker here, and welcome back to DCS World. Today we're going to go over how to use the radar warning receiver, often shortened to RWR and pronounced as RA, in your favorite DCS World aircraft. This system is present in all modern DCS World modules and allows you to identify, avoid, and if shit hits the fan, evade various threats to your aircraft that you could encounter high above the modern battlefield. In this tutorial, we're going to go over the Azimuth Display Indicator, as well as the various beeps and tones your raw equipment will make in your chosen aircraft. In this tutorial, we're going to be using the F-16C Fighting Falcon and the A-18C Hornet as our examples because they are the two most popular aircraft flown in DCS. But keep in mind that everything we talk about today will apply to any Western DCS World module, both in the present and in the future. And before we go ahead and get started, let's do a quick segue to our channel sponsor, Leading Edge Supplements, who make an awesome cognitive and energy enhancer made by pilots and for pilots to conform to FAA and USAF standards, while also being far milder than a cup of coffee or an energy drink. Perfect for keeping you in the green while flying all day long, whether in the real cockpit or in the virtual cockpit. Please use SPUD for 15% off your order of Severe Clear. So let's go ahead and get started, guys. Alrighty guys, welcome back to the office of the F-16C Fighting Falcon, and we'll go ahead and jump right into talking about how to use the raw equipment on your favorite DCS World aircraft to identify, avoid, and eventually evade the various threats you're going to be facing over the modern battlefield in DCS World. Now we've gotten ourselves into a bit of a sticky situation on our flight over the Bekaa Valley south towards King Hussein Air Base over the Syria map. We've gotten ourselves sandwiched between a whole bunch of enemy aircraft and a whole bunch of friendly aircraft, and we're going to need to use our raw equipment to identify, avoid, and evade various threats on our flight southbound. So before we get started, let's go ahead and pause the simulation here and talk about the various raw equipment that we can find in the F-16C Fighting Falcon. Now I'm using the F-16C to start off here because its equipment is very similar to all the other aircraft in DCS World, namely the F-5E Tiger II, the F-14 Tomcat, as well as the backup Azimuth display in the F-18C Hornet. Later on in this video, we're going to hop over to the F-18C and talk about Mudspikes, those surface threat emitters such as SAM systems, EW radars, and so on. Now, to a beginner, this system, the raw equipment in your favorite DCS World aircraft, may seem very complex. However, it is very simple and easy to use. It's made to be used by pilots under extreme duress of having air-to-air missiles shot at them, as well as surface-to-air missiles shot at them. So, we'll go ahead and take a look at the Azimuth Display Indicator, the part of the system that you're going to be interacting with 99% of the time when you're facing a threat here in DCS World. We're also going to talk about the various auditory tones that you're going to be hearing to help you also identify and know what kind of threats are being shot at you at the time it's happening. So look at the display, at the Azimuth Display Indicator just to the left of the ICP in the F-16 and just above the left-hand MFD. And we can see it kind of looks like a rifle scope almost, or kind of like the LMAV display on the AV-8B or F-18C Hornet. This looks very similar and should be very familiar to those who fly the F-14 or the F-5E Tiger II, or like I said, the backup Azimuth Display Indicator in the F-18C Hornet. We can think of this scope view here as a plan view, with our aircraft in the very center, with our nose pointing towards this line, heading up to the 12 o'clock position, our left wing coming to the left here, our right wing coming to the right, and of course our tail coming down to the 6 o'clock position of the display. We currently see we have one spike displayed on our Azimuth Display Indicator, and it is off at about our 10 o'clock position, so out here in this piece of airspace right over here. We can also see there is a diamond around the contact that we have, the spike on our Azimuth Display Indicator, and that means that the raw system in our F-16 has classified this spike to be the biggest threat to our aircraft, which makes sense because it's the only spike that is currently being displayed on our Azimuth display. We can also see there's a 2 and a 9 inside the diamond, denoting the type of threat emitter that we're currently receiving signals from. Now, every radar in DCS World, and of course in real life, expends and emits different wavelengths, different bands of frequencies it hops between, and all these kinds of things. And the passive sensors of our raw equipment take in those raw radar signals and then classifies them as to what type of radar and therefore what type of aircraft is emitting those radar waves. This also occurs for ground-based systems such as SAM launchers, SAM tracking radars, as well as EW radars as well. Now, there is a database located in the mission computer of our F-16 that has a list of all of the different radar emission types and being able to then codify and describe what type of radar is being pointed at us at what time. So this database is called a threat library. Now, threat libraries are a very shadowy and very secretive part of the defense establishment of any country. However, in DCS World, it just has to be modeled on a very superficial and surface level to make it work exactly like it would work in a modern fighter jet. Because in DCS World, all it has to do is say, oh, there's a MiG-29 over there, therefore we can display on our Azimuth display that it is a MiG-29. However, keep in mind that the emissions that are being taken in by our raw system and then processed by the threat library to spit out what type of aircraft or what type of SAM system is currently looking at us is based off of the raw radar emissions and not off of the aircraft itself. So therefore, a MiG-29 spike on our Azimuth display here could either be a MiG-29 or a Su-27, depending. Early versions of these two aircraft use the exact same radar sets and therefore show up as the same aircraft on a threat library of a modern military fighter jet. This is of course true in the very early models of this aircraft, and so this is true in the late 1980s through the 1990s, maybe the early 2000s, but I believe at this point in the 2021, a threat library would be able to distinguish between a MiG-29 and a Su-27. So that's a kind of a bit of an overview of how the Azimuth Display Indicator works. However, let's go ahead and talk about the auditory tones we're also going to be hearing. Now, I'm going to talk about this in very basic and general terms, and these auditory tones could change and vary in their actual sound just slightly between aircraft, but they all work more or less the same. You have a quick little chirping sound, like a little bird chirping, when you have a new spike that pops up on your Azimuth Display Indicator, or a new spike that's brought into the raw system itself that is now trying to codify what type of threat emitter it is. It's going to make a quick little chirp, chirp, chirp kind of sound whenever you get that new spike. Now, when you have a tracking radar start to acquire you and put a hard lock on you, like an STT lock if you're flying, say, the F-14 or F-16 or F-18, that's going to sound like a lower-pitched kind of dee-doo, 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 dee-doo kind of sound. And then when that STT lock that's on your aircraft has had a launch warning, that enemy aircraft has launched a missile on you, that tone, that alarm tone is going to get faster paced and higher pitched. It's going to go from dee-doo, 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 dee-doo to doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, and it's going to give you a tone warning to tell you you're being shot at. You can then use your Azimuth Display Indicator to know exactly where that threat is coming from this MiG-29 that we see here on our display indicator here. That's going to be off at our 10 or 11 o'clock position. Keep in mind that the Azimuth Display Indicator is getting its information from various receiving antennas on various parts of your aircraft. On any aircraft, F5, F-18, F-14, F-16, doesn't matter. And therefore, when you roll and bank and pull back and push forward on your stick, those receiving sensors are going to change their position, and this could change the various azimuth that you see on your Azimuth Display Indicator. And so you want to ideally have your aircraft in a straight and level attitude with wings level to identify where exactly that threat is coming from and then evade with your maneuvers on your aircraft. Of course, if there's no time for that, or your threat emitter that's coming after you is too close, definitely start evading right away. So this is, of course, definitely true when using the F-14 Tomcat, as the various points on the aircraft where those receiving antennas actually are situated is very well modeled in that aircraft. So let's go ahead and zoom back on out, and we'll unpause the simulation, and we'll continue on, and we should get new spikes pop up on our Azimuth Display Indicator. We can also use the Azimuth Display Indicator as a bit of an IFF system. we can see we're getting a raw RWS radar return off at our 11 o'clock position, and so we can more or less judge that that is going to be either a Su-27 or a MiG-29 based on the raw system spike that we're getting and seeing here. We can also see we have another raw radar contact off of our right-hand side at about maybe our 1 or 2 o'clock position, but we're currently not being spiked by that aircraft, and so therefore we cannot decide exactly what kind of airplane it may be. There we go. We've just heard that quick little chirping sound to denote new spikes popping up on our Azimuth Display Indicator. And now we've got a very different picture on the display indicator here. We've got, of course, that old MiG-29 spike that's still out here at about our 2 o'clock position. And now we've got a JF and a 14. The JF, of course, is going to be for the JF-17 Thunder, and it's going to be directly off of our left wing. As well as we also got an F-14 Tomcat directly off of our right wing out here. And so we can also see that this JF-17 has its diamond around it, and that diamond has moved from the 29 spike to the JF spike, and this JF-17 is a lot closer to the center of our display than the F-14 or the 29. We can also see here in this picture that the 29 is actually a little bit closer to the center than the 14 is out here. Now, a lot of people will tend to think that this means that the JF-17 is the closest, followed by the 29, and then the F-14 Tomcat. However, the closer the spike is to the center, the stronger the signal is. And this can correlate to distance away from your aircraft, but most of the time it just correlates to what radar emission, raw radar emission, is actually the strongest being picked up by the raw receivers on your aircraft itself. We can actually take a look at the F-10 map and see exactly what's happening around us and verify that. So we can use our ruler on the F-10 map. We can see this F-14 is about 40 nautical miles away. The JF-17 about 43 nautical miles away. So that kind of already disproves the fact that the planform view of our azimuth display is not showing distance, but rather the signal strength. And of course, because that signal is the strongest, our raw equipment has decided that that JF-17 is the most important and biggest threat to our aircraft. However, we do know that that JF-17 is a good guy. And this kind of comes to your knowledge about the mission that you're currently flying in the environment that you're currently flying. We know that Pakistan is an American ally. We're flying an American jet. Therefore, we know that this JF-17 is not going to shoot at us. However, it's important to see this on our RWR scope here, our azimuth display here, because of the fact that what if that JF-17 starts to shoot at us? It's a blue-on-blue incident. We still need to be able to avoid and evade that threat. So let's go ahead and continue on and see what new spikes pop up on us as we get closer and closer to all these different aircraft flying around the Bekaa Valley and northern Lebanon. And there's a 25 and an 18. So let's go ahead and pause it once again. And we heard that chirping sound denoting the fact that we got 2 new spikes on our raw equipment. And so we can see we got a MiG-25 out here off of our 1 o'clock position. We can also see that we've got that same raw radar contact from our RWS mode of our radar. So we can identify this contact out here at our 1 o'clock position as a MiG-25, probably a bad guy. We've also got an 18 spike behind us, denoting that it's an F-18 Hornet. Now, these codes from our threat library are very, very basic and very easy to understand. A JF, of course, a JF-17, a MiG-25, of course, a 25, an F-18, of course, an 18. However, as you get into Mudspikes and you get into different types of radars and the different generations of radars that are EW radars or tracking radars for SAM systems, things of that nature, things get a little bit more complicated. So I have linked in the description down below and in the pinned comments a threat library that you can look at to try to study and try to get a hold of what codes denote what types of threats. So let's go ahead and continue on. We still have the strongest signal from that JF-17. The 18 and the 14 not very strong. The 25 out here is pretty strong. It's a little bit closer in than the 14 and the 18, along with the 29 as well. We'll go ahead and change our frequency for our COM 1 in order to stop from listening to them. We got 2 more chirps. We can see we've got a MiG-31 and a MiG-23 out here. So the MiG-31, pretty strong signal right here, but the raw system of our F-16 here is telling us that the JF-17 is still the priority threat. Whoa, that's a whole bunch of new spikes there. So we can see here we've got another MiG-23, a Su-30 actually out here, and of course 2 more F-18s behind us. Now we know that flying over Syria, we're an American F-16, we know that JF-17, F-14s, F-18s, all good guys, MiG-29, MiG-31, MiG-23s, MiG-25, and a Su-30, probably some bad guys that we need to worry about, right? So we'll continue flying out here, and we just saw that that MiG-29 actually dropped off. So there's a number of reasons why a spike would drop off of your raw equipment or your Azimuth Display Indicator. The reason for that is that MiG-29 may have turned cold away from us, and his radar emissions are no longer pointing towards our aircraft. So that's a big reason as to why it would drop off, or he may have actually turned his radar off in order to drop off of our azimuth display to hide his position relative to any passive sensors that may be capturing his radar emissions. We can see this Su-30, his signal is getting stronger and stronger, and this MiG-31 is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Keep in mind that this does not necessarily mean the distance away from us. This just is encountering signal strength. A MiG-31 has a very big and very powerful radar, similar to an F-14, and so that's why we could be seeing a very high strength radar return from that MiG-31. And we can see the azimuth of these various aircraft are changing as the azimuth from where we're getting those raw radar returns changes as we fly south through the Kpop Valley. So it looks like these F-14s are sliding in behind us towards our 4 or 5 o'clock positions, where these F-18s are sliding back towards our 6 o'clock position. And it looks like our MiG-23s are still out here. Our 29 spike just popped back up, so he's probably turned back around and is now facing towards us again, or probably towards this JF-17. And there we go, we're currently being locked up by this MiG-23. And you can see the diamond jumped quickly from the JF-17 over to the MiG-23 spike. The reason why is because he's locking us up in an STT lock. We're currently know that he's going to be the priority threat, and that's denoted by the diamond as well. We can hear that auditory cue of the kind of lower pitched but still high frequency audio tone that we're hearing. And so that will eventually change to another tone to denote a missile launch against us. So we'll go ahead and continue on. There we go. All right, so we have a missile launch on us, and we can see that diamond is now encased in a circle, denoting which aircraft around us is launching that missile at us. We can also hear a different audio tone, a higher pitched and bigger audio tone that we can definitely gets our attention when we're listening through our headset, as well as we can see exactly which aircraft at which azimuth around our target we're going to need to look to pick up that missile launch and hopefully evade it. So let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit. And we know that that MiG-23 is going to be about our 11 o'clock position here, and there he is right there. And there's a smoke trail from a missile launch right there. It's very, very important to be able to see, okay, he's at our 11 o'clock, look up real quick, and know that there's that missile launch right there, and we're going to have to evade. Obviously, because he's coming off from our left-hand side, we're going to need to brake to the right-hand side, start popping some chaff to evade that missile launch coming at us. Now, with a MiG-23, they've got some pretty old missiles available to a MiG-23, so it's not going to be that easy to, or that hard to trash that missile. So we'll go ahead and we will unpause it. We'll pop our autopilot off, and we'll go ahead and start popping some chaff. And as we maneuver the aircraft, we can see the azimuth of these threats is moving around as well. Now we've got a whole bunch of airborne spikes on our Azimuth Display Indicator. It can be very cluttered and very difficult to see, especially as these 29, 30, 23, and 23 start to get on top of each other here. So we can actually go into priority mode of our Azimuth Display Indicator by pressing the mode button. Open is for displaying all raw spikes, and priority mode is going to be for displaying only those threats that the raw equipment in our F-16 is going to determine is the biggest threat to our aircraft. So let's go ahead and unpause it again, and we'll press that button. And so we hit priority mode, and we can see that a few of the spikes have dropped off. So it looks like that MiG-23 dropped his lock, and so that missile is no longer going to be tracking. Based on what we know about the various missiles that are available to MiG-23s, we know that if he drops the hard lock, he's going to not be able to track the weapon all the way into us. We can also see we got another MiG-23 directly off our nose here. And the RWR equipment, the raw equipment in our F-16, has decided that the Su-30 is the bigger threat than the MiG-23, even though their signal strengths are very, very similar and are very close to our aircraft. We can also see the dot out here denoting the MiG-23 that's going to be coming after us here. So this should be a very good overview of how the various... Oh, looks like we got another MiG-23 coming after us. And we can see that he's going to be in our 5 o'clock position back behind us. And that's him right there, right on our 5 o'clock, coming in through our 6. And this is an important lesson in that we cannot definitely determine distance from this. We can see we've got a Su-30 locking us up here, but we can't tell how far away he is. His azimuth display is not in towards the center of our display here. It's actually pretty far out, denoting a weaker signal strength. So one would expect that maybe he would be pretty far away, but in reality, boom, he's right there, right on our tail, and there's a beautiful, deadly Su-30 right there. So this should be a very good overview of air-to-air spikes and how to determine what are the biggest threats and how to evade those threats and what all of this symbology means for you guys who have maybe been struggling with it. So let's go ahead and hop on over to our F-18C Hornet and take a look at what Mudspikes are going to look like. Alrighty guys, and here we are in the office of the F-18C Hornet, and we'll go ahead and do almost the exact same thing we did previously in the F-16C Fighting Falcon. We're going to go ahead and look at the EW page of the F-18, which is its main azimuth display indicator, to determine what kinds of ground-based threat emitters are taking a look at us and how to evade them or avoid them entirely. So the same threat library that's in the F-16C Fighting Falcon and DCS World also applies in the F-18C Hornet. However, there are multiple ways we can actually find the azimuth to those threats in the F-18 as opposed to the F-16C Fighting Falcon. However, a lot of these other modes and other ways of finding the azimuths to different threats are going to be coming to the F-16C in later updates, and of course in subsequent videos we'll be taking a look at those as well, because it is very, very cool. So looking at the azimuth display indicator, it's going to of course be the EW page in the F-18C Hornet. We see we've already got a couple Mudspikes, one off to our left here at about our 9-10 o'clock-ish position, as well as some Hawks over here at about our 3 to 4 o'clock-ish position off of our right-hand side. So we can see also that we're getting some more information from the EW page on the F-18 than we got from the azimuth display indicator in the F-16C Fighting Falcon. We can see that over these symbols, the RT and the HK, we have a little house over those. The little house over the code denotes that it is a ground-based threat emitter. This is very, very important because it can help you decide what is a ground-based threat and what is a air-based threat, so a mud spike versus just a regular spike. So we can also see that we can use our HUD to also find the azimuth to those different threat emitters. We can see our RT right here is pointing off to the left-hand side, and if we maneuvered our jet around to the left-hand side and got the RT code on the top or at our 12 o'clock position on the EW page, it would also be on the 12 o'clock position of our HUD up towards our heading tape up here. Same thing applies to these HKs on the right-hand side. Now the RT in this instance stands for a Rapier tracking radar for a British Rapier site over here off of our left-hand side, and some Hawk battery radars off of our right-hand side. Most Hawk batteries incorporate two different radars, a search radar and a track radar, as well as a height finding radar as well. So almost 3 radars at the various Hawk sites you're going to find in DCS World and the way they're usually set up. Keep in mind here that we're over the Nevada map, but if we were over the Persian Gulf map, it's a good chance that these Hawk batteries could be enemy SAM threat indicators based upon that Iran received many Hawk batteries and used them to great effect during the Iran-Iraq War and still use them to this day. So Hawks don't necessarily mean they belong to friendly units, they could belong to Iranian units as well. We kind of have to put on our thinking cap and understand and determine what threats are going to be around us and what part of the world we're in DCS World, of course. We can also, very, very cool, use our HMD to just take a look and see the exact azimuth of those threats as well. This is very, very awesome in the F-18, and I can't wait for this feature to come over to the F-16, because if we have a missile launch at us or a SAM launch coming at us, all we have to do is look towards the threat, find where the popsicle sticks or the codes for those raw radar emitters coming in and then being codified by our threat library to find exactly where it's coming from. So if this Hawk battery launched at us, which is right down here off of our right wing, we could see exactly where that SAM launch is coming from and then evade accordingly. It's very, very important that when you have a SAM fired at you, that you get your eyes on where the SAM is coming from as early as possible, as that's going to help you evade that SAM altogether. Most pilots, especially those who encountered the SA2 guideline all the way back towards the Vietnam War, found out right away that the earlier you see a SAM launch, the better chance you have of surviving it. It's those SAMs that you don't see that are the ones that are going to get you, and I can definitely testify to that in terms of the missions that I run. Pilots who get shot down by SAMs usually say they did not see them and were not paying attention to that SAM threat that was coming up at them. So we'll go ahead and come back around to the front of our cockpit here, and we'll unpause the simulation, and we'll continue on and get new and updated threats as we fly along this about westerly course. So we'll keep an eye on our EW page, just like we did in the F-16C, looking at the Azimuth Display Indicator. And we can see, of course, that these codes are now moving along the azimuth display, showing the different azimuth. We can see that Hawk battery is now sliding back behind our right wing, as well as that Rapier sight is right over here, right directly off of our left wing. And as we fly through this, more SAM sites should pop up on us, and we should get new Mudspikes. And we'll also be able to hear those auditory tones that we'll hear in the F-18 as well. And there we go. There's a couple new spikes there. And we can hear the auditory tone for new spikes in the F-18C Hornet is a little bit different. However, it's similar in the way that it's just a quick little chirp. It's just a doo-doo-doo in the F-18 versus the little chirping sound that the F-16 makes. Keep that in mind because it's going to be very similar in the layout of these auditory tones between all aircraft in DCS World. Now we can also see in the EW page of our F-18 here, we've got an F-16 off of our left-hand side, and of course that's going to be a regular spike, not a mud spike, and an 18 off of our right-hand side. And we can also see that on the EW page of our F-18 Hornet, we get some new indications that help us determine if a spike is a friendly spike or a enemy spike. If we have the little rainbow, the little half circle over the top of the code that we see on the EW page, we know that that is a friendly threat emitter. So that F-18 and that F-16 are, of course, good guys. We can also see we got a couple more Hawks out here on the left and a Patriot sight out here on the right-hand side. So HK for a Hawk battery and P for a Patriot. So we can also know that a Patriot is definitely going to be a good guys. It's going to be Saudi Arabians, Americans, I believe the Israelis use them. A whole bunch of countries that are friendly to the United States or friendly to the West use Patriots. But these Hawks could definitely be bad guys. We can also see here that the little house symbol that goes over the top of the code for the spike, the Mudspike, does not denote whether it's a friendly or an enemy SAM threat emitter. So we just have to keep that in mind and just avoid them entirely. We can also, of course, use our HMD to look directly at the new SAM threat emitter, that new Hawk sight, off of our left at about our 10 o'clock position. And of course that Patriot sight over here at about our 2 o'clock position. So it's probably going to be somewhere out in here. Again, very, very important to always pick up that SAM launch very early. So definitely, oh, we got a new spike. We just heard that new tone. We of course know that that tone means a new spike, whether it's a mud spike or just a regular air spike. And we can see a B and a B up here. So that denotes a new code for a SA-10 search radar. So that's something that's going to be very, very dangerous directly off of our nose. And so we want to definitely try to avoid a SA-10 altogether. Very long range SAM that we definitely need to worry about. And we can see on our HUD, these same spikes are displayed in the same azimuth around our HUD, just like they are in our EW page as well as on our HMD. And we can of course see with the data link our F-18 buddy over here and our F-16 buddy over here. We can also use this to determine what kind of friendly aircraft that is. So we have ED-11 for a data link contact for Enfield 11 over here, and we can see we're getting a RWR spike from him of 16. So we can see that Enfield 11 over here is probably an F-16, whereas Enfield 11 over here is probably an FA-18. Keep in mind that when you pause the simulation, the azimuths of the RWR spikes on your HMD do not change. We can also see we've got a few new spikes out here. We've got a Mirage 2000 out here that is a bad guy Mirage 2000 with a little triangle hat on top of the M2 code. We can see that our threat library has brought in some new emissions and decided that is a Mirage 2000, thus denoting the M2 there. We've also got a search radar out here. We're probably going to say that's probably like a P19 search radar for something like an SA2 guideline site. And then if we see like an FS, that's going to be a fan song, and then a 2 is going to be a fan song locking us up to actually engage us with an SA2. So it's very, very important that we know exactly what these codes mean, but they are rather intuitive, right? An S for search radar, M2 for Mirage 2000, HK for Hawk, P for Patriot, BB for SA-10, a little bit less obvious, but definitely still easy to memorize that a BB denotes an SA-10.
1. Engaging bandit at 4323480 at 20,000.
Well, I guess I made that F-16 British or something in the mission editor. So we're still looking at this. We can also see, that M2000 is right off of our nose here. And we also are going to pause it once again to denote that we have a lock-on by that SA2 site. So that fan song radar at the SA2 site that's also co-located with this search radar, that P19 search radar, is now locking us up. We can also see a little upside down or a little smiley face underneath the house indicator on the 2 on our EW page. This means that that ground-based threat emitter is actually locking us up. Now in the FA-18, on the EW page of the FA-18, we'll go ahead and pause it to get rid of that HMD overlay. We can see that the threats are actually brought in towards the center of the planform view of our EW page based off of priority of the threat. So if a threat jumps from the outer ring to the inner ring, that means that that threat is going to be more of a priority or is more of a danger to your aircraft, unlike the signal strength kind of idea the way it worked in the F-16. However, the same principle of just looking around for the azimuths of these different targets definitely apply over any aircraft in DCS World. So we can see this SA-2 is definitely locking us up, and we can hear that tone is kind of a slower pace and kind of a lower frequency, so we can hear that doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. It means that he is STTing us and is getting ready for a missile launch, but he has not fired a missile yet. Of course, we know from our fly-through in the F-16, a missile launch is going to sound like a much quicker and higher-pitched tone than just a lock-on. And it looks like he dropped the lock, and now he's back again. And he's dropped it once more, and he's back again. So fan songs were developed in the early 1960s, and so they're not the most reliable radars in the world. So sometimes they can't get a perfect lock on your aircraft, and it takes them a little bit to actually get the required information they need to actually fire a missile at you. And we see we have a new spike that just popped up on our EW page as well. Or I should say a Mudspike, and that's going to be an SA-11 in a new house up here on our, looks like our 1130 position right here, right next to the SA-10, and just next to the Mirage 2000 as well. So we're going to need to keep an eye on him as well, and we can of course look outside using our HMD to determine where those threats are as well. So it looks like that fan song is definitely having a harder time locking us up, but eventually he should fire a missile at us, and we can see we've got SD for Snowdrift co-located on top of that SA-11. So we can see we've got that SA-11 is now locking us up along with the fan song SA-2 on our right-hand side. We can also see the search radar for an SA-11 is called a Snowdrift, and that is codified here as well as SD. So we can see there's lots of threats around us, and we're definitely going to get fired upon by at least one SAM launch here. We can see on the HUD, in the way the popsicle sticks on the HUD denote where the highest priority threat is, we can see it has the smiley face underneath the code, the 2 and the 11, as well as a dashed longer line, showing that they are actually locking us up and getting ready to fire upon us. Oh, there we go. And we can see that that SA-11 has fired a SAM at us, and it has come even further in towards the middle of our planform view, and we can see that it has a long line emanating all the way out to the furthest threat ring on the EW page. The reason why it has this line pointing all the way out is it's harder to see at what azimuth the SAM launch is actually coming from when it's so close to the center of our planform view. We can't really tell right here whether it's at like our 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock-ish position, but if we follow the line all the way out to the furthest edge of the threat rings, we can see it's right at about our 11 to 11:30 position. So we're going to be able to look at it very, very easily. And like I said, the earlier you pick up a SAM launch, the bigger your chance of surviving it is going to be. We can also, of course, unpause it and look with our HMD, and boom, there it is. There's the SAM launch right there, right where HMD showed it would be, right where our SA-11 is. And we can, of course, pop off the autopilot and start to maneuver against that target and try to evade that SA-11 launch. And now we've got that SA-2 still locking us up, and we've got the SA-11 still shooting at us as well. So we're going to evade it by kind of coming off to the left, or to the right, and going cold a little bit. And the SA-11 is still launching on us, and it's very easy to just look directly at it with the HMD and see exactly where that SAM launch is coming from. And now we've got a Mirage 2000 coming at us, coming at our tail here. And SA-11 is still trying to engage us, but his missiles are definitely not going to be hitting us. Now we can see we've got a red Mirage 2000 right there coming after us, and the SA-2 is trying to lock us up again. And now we've got a MiG-21 coming after us as well. So I think you guys get the picture here. You guys can really see exactly how all the different indications on your EW page in the FA-18, as well as on the Azimuth page, or the Azimuth Display Indicator in the F-16C Fighting Falcon. I know the system is very simple for really advanced DCS World players, and they use it all the time to evade these various threats that get shot at you all the time in DCS World. However, for new players, it can be a little bit confusing what all of this stuff means and how being able to interpret it very, very quickly to evade these various threats that you may face. So if you liked the video, please give us a like and a subscribe, and definitely check out Leading Edge Supplements. They have a really awesome product, and I really like it when it comes to flying a whole bunch of flights and then coming home to make awesome videos for you guys. So it looks like I'm really in trouble here with this MiG-21, but we can definitely see we've got that dashed longer line pointing right at that MiG-21 on our HMD. It works perfectly, just as advertised. Alrighty, so we'll go ahead and end the video here, and fly safe out there, guys, and stay healthy, of course.